Welcome to the Land Investing Business Secret Podcast, where each short episode we talk about the strategies, experiences, and the tools to help you launch, grow, and scale your land business. Learn how to find freedom within your own business, find out ways to build consistency in your processes, and hear how other everyday land investors are winning so you can get to the next step closer to building your dream life through your land business. And I'm your host of the Land Investing Business Secrets Podcast by Pebble, Jesse Kwong. Hey, how's it going? It's Jesse here from the Land Investing Business Secrets Podcast. I've got another phenomenal episode here with Clay Hepler. Man, he's got a great journey, and get a pen out because he does get into the nitty gritty. He's talking about what's going on here in the last few months of his land business and how he sees land business in general and what we're typically told by other educators and so on and so forth. A really interesting perspective from somebody who's working in there. In fact, most of everybody that comes on here is working in the land business. So I just had a great chat with Clay. I'm sure you're going to get something out of this. So another one where you want a pen and a piece of paper ready to go. Anyways, enjoy this episode here with Clay. All right, everybody, we've got Clay back on the show here. Clay, how are you doing?
Dude, it's great to be with you. I know we were talking about some supercars before this. Yeah. It's going to be a less adrenaline-filled podcast than your experience in a supercar, but we'll try to give the listeners a good listen here.
So Drew, let's give this a shout out. Drew runs an event, and the next one is coming up for 2025 in June. So if you aren't attending, make sure you check it out. Is the website up for that? Do you know?
Yeah, the website is up. I'm one of the panelists there this year. And so, Drew, I've heard runs a great event. I wasn't at the one last year. But, if you like supercars, you like to learn about land, good spot to come. So
listen, if you're like me and you don't really care for supercars, now I'd never want to sit in a supercar. It's still a great event. Like, you just get to meet a lot of cool people. And we had some great speakers there last time. And what's the website so people can look that up?
Man.
Is it milk.honey?
Yeah, it's something like that. I think if you just look at like supercars and land investing on Google, it'll probably end up popping up.
We're trying so hard to promote the event, but we have no idea where to even go for it. So just Google it. Drew Haney runs that. Is Pete still involved with that? Do you know?
I don't even know Pete. I've never met him. I just have met Drew. So I don't know if Pete's still involved, to be fair.
All right. Pete's a great guy and if you ever go to a land event and Pete's there, stick with Pete because Pete will party with you until the late night. So anyways, let's talk about what's going on with you, Clay. I had you, on last year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've been in the trenches, you've been doing land, and I want to just talk in general, what's been going on, what kind of things that you've seen and experienced recently. I know you've also got a podcast as well with Justin Pichet, so we can talk about that as well. But yeah, what's been going on with you?
Well, I think that in some, the word of the day or the word of the year or sentence of the year in 2024 was, I know I'm kind of going through a bunch of different iterations of this, but it was really the business is getting more competitive and deals are taking longer to sell. And I think that there are prevailing voices in the land space that are on the education end that are saying that it's not that's not happening, or that the land business is like it's always been. And I haven't experienced that. Now, everyone's business is truly different, so they could be experiencing something different, and people can experience, different realities. But the space is getting more sophisticated, and also land is taking longer to sell. And so we can make a decision as business owners to cut and leave, or we could just get better. And so the evolution of me as a business owner since we last connected was focusing on the latter, right? I'm still here. I'm still having a conversation. And so one of the things that I realized is on the last podcast, I was talking about, hey, the Landman Accelerator, which was something I was super excited about. And we had some people go through it, and people really got a lot of benefit from it. But I realized very quickly that it's hard to have two masters. And so, I don't see, for the listeners, like Jesse, I don't know, kind of what you do on the side, but like you're all Pebble, right? And you guys have built something really impressive over there. And so the people, especially when you're at the beginning of your journey, like it's really hard to be focused on two things. Now you can do two things okay, fine, but if you can do two things really well, or one thing really well, instead of doing two things, then why don't you just do the one thing really well? So the realization that I had was that, and it was kind of a failure on my part. I knew it. We all kind of know it in our hearts that that's the reality. But focus is a multiplier, and when the business gets more competitive, when deals are taking longer to sell, it's easy to say, okay, I'm going to jump to another thing because that other thing is going to save me. And I can see the quick cash, I can add value here, and I can build a business in this way, which will supplement my main business. But if you really look at that, you're saying that's an admittance, a subconscious or conscious, that your main thing needs work. It needs to be more time dedicated to it, and it needs a different approach. And so that's really what I've experienced since we've last, and that was very transparent, but that's what I've experienced since we last connected.
Before we sort of talk about what kind of work you've been doing and what have you been focused on, or what has really moved the needle, I want to come back to this whole, the space is getting competitive and deals are taking, or properties, land is getting taking longer to sell. Um and I always think like it's also relative. Like, are we talking like relative to your expectations when you first started land? And what about for those that are new to land? Like, is this still not something that is worth doing when they are not jaded? I don't know how to use the word jaded, but they're not jaded by what it used to be like anyway. So is this still a great model? Is this still a good thing to get into? And yeah, give me some perspective on that.
That is an incredible point. It's like, it reminds me of like you, the person that compares themselves to another person. Like, I'm super, like, I had a successful, imagine, like, business exit, right? And then I go to the neighborhood that I want to go and live in, right? This is just a perfect example. And it's this hedonic treadmill of, oh, but this person has this other thing which is better, a house that's 2 times as big, even though I felt really good about myself. It's kind of that comparison game, which is, oh, I'm comparing myself to what I could be. And it's the same exact thing. It's the backwards comparison, right? So I'm with you. Like, it is still an incredible opportunity. I'm just saying, speaking for the people that I really know how to speak to, which is the people that are having businesses that are, hey, I have a $500,000 year business, $1 million year business. Like, how do I kind of get to the next level? How do I kind of climb my way up? Those are really I know that game because I had to go through it, versus the people that are just starting. I think there's plenty of opportunity um, in the space, but I'm just calling out what a lot of people are saying. Oh, this is this incredible, like, no one's in this business, whatever. I think that that's a narrative that needs to be stopped because it's not fair to a lot of people.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. Well, thanks for painting us that picture. And you've had your head down, and so you're really focused on your land business. I want you to share with us what have you learned recently. What are the things that you've kind of put your attention towards, um, that is making you smile and continue to truck along doing what you're doing right now. I'm sure something is keeping you excited here. We'd love to know.
Yeah, I think the building component of where I'm at in my business is like very exciting. Like, you get the early building component, which is you're just learning the business and you're building up your initial processes. And then as you kind of scale, then you have to build your systems. And then as you build your systems, then you build your people. And as you build your people, then you continue to level up in your business. So what's really exciting to me is kind of how I'm thinking about scaling the business now. And it's a reflection on what worked in the past versus what can work in the future. Now, if you're early on in your business, you're getting your first couple of deals, you really just need to get your feet wet. in my experience, I just came in and I sent out a bunch of mailers and I learned the business, and it was a lot of hand to hand combat. But after you get to a level, I would say it's about $1 million gross per year, that you have to make a decision, a very conscious decision in your business. And that the conscious decision is, where do I want to take this? Right? Do I want to be a volume shop, a very high volume, high transaction shop? And in that case, what you're doing is you're going to increase your headcount, you're going to increase your marketing, and you're basically diversify your risk across a variety of different parcels, right? After, if you do that, then that's a totally different business, right? In the other way, it's you can go to a quality shop. Now, what happens is when you do a quality shop, you do fewer, larger deals. Now that transition is lower, kind of lower headcount, but there's more risk as it relates to getting a deal done. I know a guy that was working on this massive development deal, and he had 300 400K all into it, and he had to jump out of the business because he put himself in that position. He wasn't able to execute on the development. It wasn't his fault, right? It ended up being out of his control, but you put your business at risk at that point. So those are the two kind of divergent paths that you go from after you get to $1 million a year business. And so I chose the quality, right? I chose the quality of like it, I want to go after fewer and larger deals. Now, the way that I thought about transitioning into this wasn't just like the way that we get into this business, which is burn the boats, go into the business and go all in. It's gradually adding those types of parcels. You hear a lot of people talk about, oh, I'm going to become a subdivide person or an entitlement person, but they don't realize that that's actually another business. And so the way I thought about it when I started to attack these opportunities was, I have my main thing of which I need to dedicate the majority of my efforts. And then I have this side thing for which we can allocate a certain marketing budget towards. And we are allocate this marketing budget towards it. But the main thing is still happening. And I think people throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, I'm just going to do this because I know if I get one deal, it works out. But then you put yourself in the same stress that you do at the beginning of your business, which is, I just need to get that deal. I got to get that next deal. And you end up swapping the kind of the short-term profits with the long-term growth. And you can't scale as effectively.
Question for you. You mentioned like it's really at the $1 million gross where you start sort of, it becomes a two-pronged path here. You're either into the volume game or you're now sort of taking on less property, and you're looking, and I'm assuming when you say quality, properties that are going to have a larger payout but are going to be a lot more involved per property. um, why at the $1 million, and can you not do both?
Um, you can do both, but I'm trying to build a 8-figure business, and so I don't think you can do both and build an 8-figure business, right? I think that you at some point you will get stuck, and so you have to either dedicate that effort towards the high volume 8-figure shop, or the high volume or the low volume 8-figure shop with the larger deals. So I don't think you can do both. Now, someone could say, no, I actually do both, but I've connected with a lot of larger developers, like people that only do entitlement with single family homes, or also with self storage and car washes, or people that just do high volume flipping, and they don't kind of cross paths because it's a distraction from the main thing. It's like, do you have in your business, do you have outside of the CRM, you don't really have like other things that you're kind of doing, right? So I believe it's a distraction.
Yeah, okay. And coming to that question, why is the $1 million sort of like the where you draw the line at?
Yeah. So at $1 million, you start to have a sophistication in your business. And depending on how you're structuring your business, it gets to the point of like, you have probably a lead manager, acquisition manager. You're definitely going to have a transaction coordinator. You might have multiple outbound teams, whether it's callers, texters, whomever. You're going to have a pricer if you're sending out mail. You're going to have anywhere between 8 to probably 15 people, depending on how many people are in your business. You have global or local talent. And so at that point, then you can start to allocate those resources to other tasks, or you just double down on what you're currently doing. And usually when you're getting a gross of $1 million, our profit margins in this business are quite high, relative to other businesses. I mean, not your type of profit margins, not like CRM profit margins, but software is really, really great profit margins. But someone at that level can probably profit 50%, 40, 50%. And so they're starting to get that extra cash that they need to make a strategic hire or allocate money elsewhere instead of doing it in the main business. And so that's how I felt in my business too. Like, I'm just speaking from personal experience. That's why I thought the $1 million mark is truly the where you start to bifurcate.
You explained to us, and sorry, we'll go beyond this, but I find this so interesting. You explained to us the path to sort of going, the volume way. You would just scale up on your marketing, you diversify on some of your marketing, and I would assume you can probably transition into that like as soon as you like meet $1 million. On the other end here, I think you might have mentioned it already, but if I wanted to start thinking about, hey, I do want to be a quality shop here. I want to take on larger properties. Yes, I'm willing to absorb some of that risk as well. So what you mentioned and what you laid out earlier was that we would keep our bread and butter running and sort of treat the quality and the larger properties as sort of a certain percentage of your hours is spent on that. Can you sort of walk me through that one more time? So, just so for our listeners, if this is something that they might be, start to think about or start planning, how should they approach this? Essentially, what does that path look like to get to that sort of quality side of things?
Yeah, I think that you need to dedicate yourself to one of the main kind of like entitlement, whether doing single family homes or car washes or multifamily properties or you know um, self storage or rural subdivides in certain areas. What you have to do at that level is, I remember like thinking through the analogy of what does this feel like when I'm trying to go after these larger deals. It's like trying to remove the mindset of a volume guy, because I'm a very direct marketing sales volume guy. It's like trying to shovel a driveway with a spoon. I'm trying to like get all this stuff out. It's taking so long, but it's a totally different type of marketing. You're going to be more targeted. There's much fewer, and so instead of doing your 10,000 mailers, 30,000 mailers per month, it's like 500 targeted mailers, high quality mailers. And so if you're transitioning from the 10,000 mailers, let's say, or you got to have more than 10,000 mailers to make $1 million a year, but at 20,000, 30,000 mailers, maybe you allocate a certain percentage of that budget towards these new types of properties. So, your monthly budget for mailers is $15,000. Well, maybe you say, hey, I'm going to do 12,000 bread and butter, and I'm going to allocate that 3,000 towards these newer tracks, right? And understand that the majority of the work for attracting and focusing on larger opportunities happens on the front end. It doesn't happen on the back end, right? So what I mean by that is you're completely changing the entire process of targeting these types of properties. You're doing scattershot mass marketing to a bunch of smaller flips, whereas you're spending the majority of your time on the front end finding the parcel, checking regulations, zoning regulations, and being very precise in your marketing. And that's just a completely different approach.
Yeah, and we just talked to somebody else on the podcast. Same exact thing we've heard. You're spending more time on that upfront, and looking for those properties. That's really interesting. Um, Clay, so now that you're sort of head down in that area, what are some, you're spending. I would love to know what kind of properties are you looking at, and what things have you realized kind of going through this path now that you're, again, let's just use that word, you're now more of a quality shop. Um, what does that all look like? What kind of learnings have you had?
Right. So if you're focusing on in the land business, like I kind of broke this down in like three ways. Like if you're trying to add a new revenue stream in your business, change the type of business that you have to focus on your system, you have to focus on your vision, and then you have to focus on your capital. Like your capital structure is going to be very different as it relates to, for example, larger transactions, right? So, for example, if you're when I work with people on a one-on-one basis, which I do in a very limited basis, what we do is we do, and I know you're a big fan of Dan Martell, but we do like a time audit of like what are all the things that I'm doing that are contributing to my business, the outcomes of my business. So I would conduct a time audit of like, for 2 weeks, what is everything that I'm doing towards my main sort of column of business if we're going towards a quality shop? And then how can I allocate a certain percentage of that time towards the focusing on more quality stuff, right? And then after we get an idea about what's going on, like this is exactly what I did. Idea about, hey, what am I doing in my main thing? And then what can I allocate towards my quality shop efforts? Then I use exactly what Dan Martell says as well, which is like buy back my time, right? We focus on the hiring ladder. In the land business, Jesse, it's admin, right? You're going to get an administrative person. Maybe you need another data scrubber or two because you're going to change your process here, right? You're going to get maybe another transaction coordinator. You need more help in that way. That would be fulfillment. After that, you might need a different type of marketing. Maybe you're going to work with a different type of marketing company because you need more precise letters. After marketing, it's sales. Maybe you need a higher quality salesperson. Maybe for those of you that have just virtual assistant salespeople, maybe you're going to need a a US based salesperson that has experience specifically for this thing. Or if you have a lot of capital, which is why we were talking about the $1 million mark, maybe you hire leadership that have already done this, which is the highest level of this hiring ladder. And so then at that point, then you start to just look at your constraints in your process. It's like, where am I having a bottleneck right now for me achieving my goals of moving into this quality shop? That would be an example of how we think about our systems in moving into this new venture. If you're trying to do that in your business.
Can you repeat to us, now that you're doing and you're focused on in the direction that you're focused, what does your team look like again?
Okay. Yeah, I can break. You want me to just break down everyone?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so leadership, you're looking at it. I'm the kind of CEO, and I also serve as the operations person. And then so underneath me, we have a on the sales department side, we have a closer, acquisitions closer, very talented guy that also helps with subdivides, and I teach him to be able to kind of take a subdivide A to Z. We have 2 lead managers underneath him, and then on the marketing side, we have a manager of our outbound team, and then we have 8 outbound people that are in the outbound team. And
When
then
you say outbound, is that things like cold calling kind of outbound?
Yes, exactly. And then right next to that, we have our marketing support staff, which is our scrubbers. We have two scrubbers in our marketing support staff. Right next to that, we have my executive assistant and chief of staff, which handles basic operations, some HR stuff, everything you would imagine an executive assistant and chief of staff to do. One thing that just some thoughts for the listeners, I made a mistake of thinking of an admin and executive assistant as the same person, and they're not. They're very, very different. And so I hired an executive assistant when I really needed an admin assistant, and they're different pay grades and different skill sets. It ended up working out because this person was able to elevate. I was able to elevate for this person and elevate this person into a more operations based position. But that's something that you want to be really aware of.
So sorry to clear that up. So you have an admin assistant, not an exec assistant.
No, I actually have an exec assistant, not an admin assistant. I should have hired the admin, but I hired an executive assistant, not knowing sort of the difference mentally. And I was able to upskill myself as a leader, and it worked out with her. And then I have a transaction coordinator, and then I have a disposition associate, which is basically like a lead manager for our dispositions team. And then underneath our disposition associate, I have a disposition admin and basically a revenue operations disposition admin position. So she's a support staff for our disposition associate.
How big is the team?
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot.
Was that about 10?
No, it's like let me just think. 9, 3, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 17 or 18,
Are they all full time?
all full time.
Wow. Wow. That is crazy. That is bonkers. Okay, sorry. I'm just so floored by with all, everything that you have going on right now. Okay. So we were talking about your structure. You mentioned something about capital too, the way that you structure your capital. Is there anything that you do different now that you're more, again, focusing on these larger properties? Like what if people have to know about capital and structuring capital?
It's interesting. It's really a continuum. And so at the beginning of your land flipping journey, what you end up doing is you do a lot of joint venture partnerships. And I was talking to Drew Haney, and shout out to Drew Haney. We had an amazing conversation, just a giver type of guy. And we just sat on the call, and he just told me the whole thing about his business. And he really is like a capital partner for a lot of his the people that he works with, and the way that he structures it, and how much he gives to his clients and people he work with or partners is really impressive. But you work with people like Drew at the beginning, right? Deal funders, and a lot of times that's really good because they bring expertise for these smaller flips that you really need, right? And so you need to work with a deal funder. At least I did for like my first whole year. I worked with a ton of different deal funders, found one that I really liked, and they serve as a consultant and a capital, which is really helpful. And I would recommend anyone, especially starting out, to do that path for at least a year. Work with someone that you can really trust. And then you phase out of that, Jesse. You kind of get into, I have the experience. You might stay with the deal funder, but you might find cheaper capital. You have a more established track record, and so you're going to have cheaper capital, whether it's through hard money, whether it's through bank financing. Then you go into larger deals, and then you realize I don't have enough money to do this new larger deal. And so you kind of end up on the other end of the spectrum again, in which you're doing purely equity partnerships, right? Because most people, when there are these larger land deals on the line, they're going to want a piece of the action, and you're going to have to personally guarantee this. One of my I have a podcast, a Ground Game podcast, really talk about kind of higher level, strictly how to build a multi-7-figure business with my co-host Justin Pichet, amazing, very talented guy. And we were talking about capital structures and how in land, especially with bank financing, they're going to want you to do a personal guarantee because there's no cash flow on it. And so you need high net worth people to come alongside you and partner with you. So you end up partnering with people like Justin, like me, that are in the space, that have the track record to help you take down. So you're also kind of getting that consulting on the also end of the larger deals. And so that's what I've experienced. And so with capital, you scale with your capital, but a lot of times you scale with your deal funders and your partners like that. And I find that that's a large constraint for a lot of people because they're not comfortable taking on these larger transactions because they don't have that help. And a capital partner can serve as the core help that you need.
All right, so you hear how big Clay's team is, and sort of the people that he's hired along the way. As your team scales, as your team grows, your business operation grows, marketing grows, properties grows, everything continues to grow, and this is why we've built something like Pebble, really to help you streamline and bring everything together inside of one platform. Clay is a huge partner of ours here at Pebble as well. And our goal here is to help you streamline, but also to get deals done a lot quicker. So if you want to hop on a call here with our team members, head over to pebblerei.com, book a demo, get an understanding of how you can bring all your data together, bring all your communication together, how you can move the team a lot quicker and make decisions a lot quicker. Speed is important as this space continues to get competitive, so don't get left behind. Anyways, I hope you enjoy the rest of this, the rest of this episode here with Clay. Mm-hmm. Clay, um, I actually would love for you to perhaps walk us through a deal that you've done recently and maybe some of the key learnings or any learnings. I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but is there anything you can share with us? But before that, is there anything else that I'm missing here as we're sort of on the topic of scaling a business and sort of these two forks that we're talking about? But before we talk about the actual deal, is there anything else that I'm missing here?
Yeah, I would say the thing that helped me scale my business the most was being around and connecting with people who were, this is so cliche, but there were a couple of steps ahead of me and that actually had like they're actually running a business. It's not like someone that doesn't have a business, not like someone that sells education primarily. It's someone that actually is still in the business and is actively participating. That has been more of a help for me to scale. Now, I'm going to shout out my co-host again, Justin Pichet. Justin's about a year and a half longer in the business than I have been in, and that guy and we have an amazing relationship, and he has helped me so much. And he's just a couple steps ahead of me. You hear that, Justin? Just a couple steps ahead of me, and he's been having someone like that, like that I can call on a coach, even if it's informal, right? It's not a paid coach, is something that really can help you scale your business. And the reason why is because they force you to be very clear about what you're trying to do in your business. And so the component of having a clear vision of exactly what you want to get out of this business is something that I see a lot of land investors lack. Like, where's my business going to be in 6 months or 12 months or 18 months? And having that clear vision of exactly what it should look like will allow you to make decisions in your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does sound cliche, but what you said here, just having people and being around people who are just a couple steps ahead of you. Yes, just a couple. Is so important. So I'm not in the real estate investing world as much as you guys are. I am in the software world and the tech world, and this is I have no experience running a tech company or a startup like this, and that's the key thing. Being in these network, I hate the word network, just being in a circle with others that are slightly ahead of you, having a regular conversation. There are a few people that I have regular touch-ins with, have been so invaluable. Like it sometimes takes one conversation, all it does, and then you go on this completely different trajectory that completely alters your business. And so I totally agree with you on that.
Jesse, let me just say one more thing about the scaling thing. I have people that come to me with $750,000 businesses that are super impressive, and they cannot tell me what their cost for a lead is. They cannot tell me what their average profit is. And so the vision is important. The capital, getting the right capital partner is so important. The All this stuff is critical, but you have to know your data. Like, I know this podcast is like, oh my gosh, this guy's saying the same thing that everyone else says. But if you don't know at a moment's glance or can say what your cost per lead for every one of your channels are, your average gross profit per deal, your average cash conversion cycle, how long does it take you to sell deals? Like, you cannot scale this business.
Yeah. I'm sitting here thinking, I better know these things. um, yeah. I really don't have much to say to that other than, yeah, know your numbers. I'll be honest here. That's one thing that I've really struggled with is to know and have a good grasp of our numbers. And that's why we brought on a fractional CFO onto our team now, just to make sure Kevin and I are overseeing so many things that a lot of times we lose track of these numbers. And like, you have to do what you have to do to get a hold of those numbers. Now we're on, every other week we're meeting about these numbers and going through these numbers. I will tell you, there are so many numbers that I sometimes sit with ChatGPT or Google just to Google the acronyms. So I've got a horrible memory. This is what my wife tells me this all the time. I've got a horrible memory.
Same, man. Same. I'm with you.
Oh man, like some people read a book, like Ben, over there, he's always quoting from books and whatnot. I can never quote from anything. I've got the worst memory. So I would say do what it takes to be able to remember your key metrics, whatever those key metrics. Define it and learn it. It's quite embarrassing because again, I'm still bad with acronyms. I remember I know you brought up Dan Martell, but I know that. Uh, in his sessions, like nobody's allowed to use acronyms, and I felt so relieved to know that. Great, I don't need to know any acronyms. But at the end of the day, you should know your numbers. Yeah, very, very helpful there for us to kind of keep in mind, Clay. Anything else on the scaling side of things? I still want you to walk through a deal with.
I can walk through, absolutely, guys. Just quick thing with the numbers: cost per lead, cost per contract, cost per deal, average gross profit per deal on your marketing side, cash conversion cycle, how long does it take you to buy and sell a deal, and your average time to close on a deal. Those are the numbers that you need to figure out for all your marketing channels. And we could jump into the deal. Okay, so we're buying a deal for $195,000. It is a 20-acre tract, and it is a subdivide. Now, what was interesting about this deal is it has amazing road frontage. I mean, like, you couldn't have a better deal. It has road frontage on two sides. And so my acquisition guy, who is trained in subdivide, how to like look at a subdivision and put it together, he's like, dude, this is a killer subdivision with three like clear parcels. We can do like 7-acre-ish, 6-acre parcels, and we'll sell this thing, and we'll do really, really well on it. We could probably sell them for $100K each. This is what he thought, or $120K each. And so we're like, okay, buy for like 200, sell for 300, not bad. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to call the county and figure out the zoning just to make sure that we have the right zoning here in order to subdivide this, right? Because so many times, you're going to hear this in a second, you think that you can do something with a parcel and you cannot do it. And so what we did is we called the county, and the county said, oh, that's actually outside of our zone of jurisdiction. It is a jurisdictional, a municipality that runs the zoning in this specific area, right? So you have these zoning maps, and then the local zoning kind of supersedes the larger zoning. It's like, imagine like you have a city, and the zoning in a city is going to be different than the zoning in a county, of course. But sometimes townships have these as well. And so this was a little township, and they had there was one township in this entire county, and they had this odd zoning. And so when I looked up the zoning, I saw that you could either subdivide it into above 15 acres or below 4 acres. And so it completely changed the way that we were subdividing this parcel. And there was a certain depth to width requirement. So instead, we had to do five 4-acre parcels. But we spoke with a local agent, and the local agent was like, oh, yeah, like you could sell these things for probably like 130 a piece. And so I was like, all right then. So it's way better. And so basically you had to go up in front of this township and provide like a reason why this is, like a standard development. It changed it from a minor subdivide into a major subdivide as defined by the local jurisdiction. But we have all the information that we need in order to present it to the township, and they actually want this type of development because they need these types of houses. So it was perfect. And so we took a deal that was buy for 195 to sell to 300, to buy for 195, sell for like 650. And I was like, that, guys, I'm going to say this, that doesn't often happen, right? That that it's usually the other way. It's usually buy for 195. Oh wait, I have to cancel this, right? Because of these zonings. But that was an example of us having to dig in, and we had to call the health department, the county, but having the expertise to know to keep looking. And then we had some problems with the local township director, but we were able to basically pitch this in a way that he was really open to it. But at first, he wasn't really open to it. And so because they're in the process of like changing their zoning laws again. But we were able to get them to stamp it as a grandfathered in parcel. So it's going to be a killer deal. I mean, it's a really good subdivide deal. But it's that's why we like quality deals.
Well, you're going through a lot of trouble. I mean, how did you sway them to let you sort of subdivide? Was there anything that you learned in what you had to present to them that we should know about? That
Yeah. So essentially, what happened was the county guy said, "Oh yeah, that's the township guy was he's a little hard to deal with." And I was like, I was asking him why is he hard to deal with? And he's lived in this community for a really long period of time, and he really does not like people from out of the county. He was like very honest, and so I called him and I used the Chris Voss accusation audit. And which those that don't know, it's basically calling out everything that the person would say, or would think in their head. Like, this person's going to come in here for sales. This person's going to come in here and lowball me. You just think I'm another land investor trying to take your land from you. You're probably thinking that I'm going to turn around and wholesale this, sell this to another person. Like, calling out all the things that they could potentially think negatively about you. So you lay it out on the table. And I did the same exact thing with this township guy. I said, hey, you probably think I'm just another out of county investor coming in here and trying to add more housing and making housing more unaffordable for the people already here. And he was like, yeah, I do think that. And then I just kind of said, hey, that I know that this is against what you're really looking for, but I understand that there's a need for affordable housing in the area, and that's what we're trying to do. And he warmed up to it and ended up working out.
That is awesome. And so for those who don't know who Chris Voss is that a book? Is that
Never Split the Difference? He's a former FBI hostage negotiator. I'm sure everyone that listens to your podcast is into self-improvement, and they've probably heard of him. But yeah, if you guys haven't listened to that, highly recommend Chris Voss.
Clay, we're out of time, unfortunately, here. I want to thank you for coming on here and just giving and just sharing with us. I'm sure people want to connect. I hope you want other people to connect. How can people connect with you if they wanted to? What's the best way they can reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Clay Hepler. I'm sure you'll put some stuff in the show notes for people to reach out to me. But yeah, if you ever want to talk dirt or interested in getting some help in funding a larger subdivide deal or getting some consulting on something like that, I'm happy to take a look at it.
Clay, thanks so much for coming on the show again. I mean, if you ever want to come back on, I'm sure people would love to hear what's going on with you. Clay, you're a true entrepreneur. I admire your journey and the things that you've gone through. I've known you for a little bit now, so thanks for sharing all of that. I hope to see you in June. I hope to see all you guys in June. I know Clay's going to be there. Clay brought it up to me. I'm like, shoot, yeah, we didn't really talk about it yet, so we'll have to figure it out on our end. But thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Before you stop this episode or hit the next episode, I want to personally thank you for listening to this episode of the Land Investing Business Secrets podcast by Pebble. If you found this helpful, we greatly appreciate any awesome reviews and ratings on whichever platform you are listening to this on. And if you have 2 minutes and wanted to step it up even more and help others, feel free to share this in other Facebook groups or pages or any communities, giving others a heads up of the Land Investing Business Secrets podcast or the specific episode that may help them on their land investing journey. Once again, thanks so much for listening, and catch you on our next episode.